Okay, so I'm actually specializing in YA fantasy, and
Okay.
I just did a top 10, and these are just Rachel's top 10 YA books that she thinks that you should read. So I'm going to start with like my most favorite, and I'm going to start old school, and then I'm going to go to more contemporary stuff. So I read this book when I was 12. It's still my favorite book. It's really good. It's a Newberry winner. You should totally read it. It's called The Hero and the Crown by Robin McKinley. Anybody heard of it? Oh my God. It's really good. It's I think it probably would fall into middle grade, and it was published in 1984. And this is really the first book where I fell in love with fantasy. It's just great. The protagonist is kind of a young outcast princess, and she's not really accepted in her society. So she goes and slays dragons, and it goes from there. It's really well done. And I read it almost every year. I reread it. It's very good. You'll enjoy it as an adult. So that's number one. I don't have all of them in person. Second on my list is Wrinkle and Time. I'm sure you've all read that, right? Yeah. So that's like classic, and that's old school, right? And so there was a movie that came out, but it wasn't. I like that Oprah was the God character. That was cool. But besides that, like they kind of ruined the book. Also, Going to the Communist Planet was good. Yeah, Catherine was like, no.
Yeah,
No.
I agree with you. I think they missed it, and it's hard because that book is about perception, and it's about these literally A Wrinkle in Time. How do you convey that visually?
Right.
I don't think we have the CG yet for that. So I agree with you. It kind of was really sort of flat.
It was flat, but the books are so good.
The book is awesome.
There's actually a play of Wrinkle in Time too, and that's fantastic if you get a chance to see that at the Asheville Folk Festival. I get them all. The film or the theater festival up there. And that's really
the OSF, the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, did it.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's just a really excellent book. I think there's started off as 3, but there might even be a couple more.
There are.
Yeah, and they're all worth reading. They're all really good. And that's a really good classic middle grade fantasy that you'll enjoy reading again as an adult. And I think all of the books on my list, they're all books that I enjoyed rereading as an adult, and I use them as references in my own work. Another really great classic is the Earthsea by Le Guin. And actually the second one in the series is called the Tombs of Atuan. And if you don't have to read the first book to enjoy the second book, this book is so good it like hurts. Everything I mean, Le Guin is like a master writer, of course, but this book in particular, just the way it's laid out and the themes, it's so beautiful it hurts. It's about this young child is taken to be a priestess at a very young age, and the gods live underground. And so she's the keeper of the unnamed gods. They eat her name. And it's like super creepy. She goes in this underground cavern where you can't really see, and she has to memorize the whole labyrinth under the city. And goes from there. It's very cool. And so I highly recommend the fourth book in the series, Tahanu. I would skip because it's like a downer. All the fans hated it, but she recently came out with the final book in the series, and it's awesome, and it kind of brings everything to a nice close. Really good series, classic. Not that many people read it anymore, which is surprising to me. I think it was maybe more popular back in the day, but it's an amazing series. And I think the next one I'm going to talk about is the one that everybody reads. It's The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, right? And the movies were great for Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit movie was terrible. I don't know. Catherine again. I don't know what
they did. Said no. Yeah, they said no Hobbit. It was badly done.
Oh my God. But The Lord of the Rings was good, and the books were good. The only problem with The Lord of the Rings with a modern audience is that it's written, I mean, just the time period, like some things just take forever, and we're used to a much snappier pace. I think in that respect, Le Guin's books hold up. They're much more concise. But Lord of the Rings kind of rambles on. But the other thing with Lord of the Rings too, which is problematic, is that it's all the protagonists, 90% of the protagonists are men. And of course, the few women that we have one awesome chick with a sword, except that she goes back to being not with a sword at the end, and she realizes fighting isn't good for women. Okay, I'm sorry. And the other women are just like very beautiful. I'm very bored by very beautiful women. So those some problems, but they're classics, and I mean those are just definitely worth a read too. If you had to choose, I'd choose Le Guin. That's just my own personal
Okay.
prejudice, because I'm a huge Le Guin fan. Getting back to the science fiction, just as an aside, I really like The Left Hand of Darkness is my favorite science fiction book. It's really
Yeah, there's also, if you've never read The Lathe of Heaven, you need to read The Lathe of Heaven.
writing it down, English.
They made a 2-hour film out of it also, which I think is very hard to find. But it's very close. She may have written she may have worked on the screenplay. They made a very good TV film of it.
Nice.
But The Lathe of Heaven is a real mind bender. I think it's one of her best books.
Nice. All right, so I'm gonna get on with the list. Thank you, Ivan. I'm gonna read that for sure. So I'm jumping to contemporary books now. And so, of course, Harry Potter. And it's actually really worth reading. I read it as an audiobook. And actually, the audiobook production won awards. It's really good. I mean, it's really, really good. And Harry Potter is really worth reading. I have younger sisters, and so we're always talking about HP together. But it's really well done. I mean, the first couple books are middle grade. So they're a little more simple, but they age with the reader. And so it's nice as you go along, things kind of get more and more serious and a little more complex and interesting. It's a great series. I read it for the first time, the whole series, when I was in my early 30s, and I was like bawling hysterically by the end. It's beautiful. It's beautifully done. So I know that there's a lot of hype around Harry Potter. That's why I didn't read it all the way through when I was a teenager. By the time the later books came out, I was already a senior in high school, and I was like too cool, sadly, for Harry Potter. So sad. But I've seen the error of my ways. They're excellent. They're very well written. And they're a classic for sure. So I love Harry Potter. But another kind of similar series is Sabriel, or the Abhorsen series by Garth Nix. And I believe he's an Australian author. Not a lot of people know about this series. The series isn't as strong as Harry Potter, but the first book is just as strong as anything in Harry Potter. It's really good. It's one of my favorite books. And it's about a young woman. So I like that the protagonist is a woman. And her father is a necromancer in a separate kingdom. He's a good necromancer, though. He puts the dead back to sleep. He fights all the guys who keep trying to raise up these zombies. And she's at boarding school in a different kingdom when her father is kind of captured. So she has to go back and kind of claim her magic. It's beautifully done. It's beautifully written, and you'll enjoy it as an adult or as a kid. It's more of a YA. It's a little more darker, a lot not sex but violence. And raising the dead, I don't think that's really great for middle grade. But it's so cool, and it's kind of a nice mix of high fantasy and urban fantasy. So at one point you have like the zombies coming into the other kingdom, and the other kingdom is it's very much like modern day England, and they're like phosphorus bombing the zombies, and you're like, this is literally the greatest thing ever. It's the best of both worlds. So I highly recommend Garth Nix. He's also done, his short stories are outstanding. I mean, he's a very original thinker. I haven't seen his ideas anywhere else. He had one short story about like vampires are actually genetically modified, like robot alien creatures that came to this planet like by accident. Like, it's amazing. Like who would have thought about that? So I highly recommend him as an author and the Abhorsen series. Next is a series I really enjoyed the entire series as a young adult. The whole series didn't hold up as good as an adult, but this book in particular did. So anybody read Mercedes Lackey? She's great. So her work can either be really good or like super like sorcery sword cheese fest. So, but the Valdemar series by and large holds up really well. And this is a standalone book called By the Sword. And this is, I think, the best one in my opinion in the series. It's really strong female protagonist. And basically she becomes a mercenary captain and goes on adventures in this sort of magical kingdom. And it's lovely. It's very well done. I highly recommend it. It's I have sisters that are really enamored with Twilight, and I'm just not personally a fan. I don't think it teaches great things about being a woman. Personally, it's just my opinion. Other people really love it and it gives them a lot of nourishment. So I don't want to diss that, but it just doesn't speak to me. But this is great because it's a female protagonist and she's strong and she's intelligent. And the love, like, she's not just like this damsel in distress, let me marry a vampire bullshit. It's like a strong character. You want, like, she's awesome. You want to be her, like she's a good role model. Good. So highly recommend Mercedes Lackey. The Valdemar series is really great. So much I could say, but short time. So this isn't technically YA fantasy, but a lot of that age group, there's like a bleed over between adult fantasy sometimes in YA. And this is a really great one. So Robert Jordan, Wheel of Time. Any fans?
No, I'm familiar with his work.
Oh my God. I've gone through the series a couple times. It's about 14 books. Each one is like well over 1,000 pages. It's like an investment. Yeah, it's an investment. Wow. But it's kind of like this class, like his world building is amazing. And the characters are really great. We get some good female leads that are strong. And it's the entire world is really quite incredible. I did it as an audiobook. The audiobook production is not great. The voice actor they have for the men is terrible, but it's a great story. I listened to it when I was commuting to Sierra College, so I had some time to go through a bajillion hours of this book. I highly recommend. He ended up passing away before he finished the series, so he handed it off, his very detailed outline, to Brandon Sanderson, and I actually prefer Sanderson's writing. It's just a little more snappy. Robert Jordan, he has like the same kind of issues with Tolkien, where it's like, how much description do we really need? But it's very beautiful, and it's, if you like a lot of intrigue and a lot of depth, it's a great series and such really great world building if that's something you're working on in your own work. So those are kind of like my modern classics, and now I'm going to go to contemporary.
Have 2 minutes, Rachel.
Okay, it would be really 1 minute per book. So Lonnie Taylor, Strange the Dreamer. I just have the sequel, A Muse of Nightmares. It's, her writing is outstanding. She does a switching POV, which I find difficult to pull off, and she does it seamlessly. I mean, it's a great book. The only problem with Strange the Dreamer is the first 100 pages are a little slow. Once you get past that, you finish it in one day, and it's a big book. Very well done, very well written. Very last contemporary book I'd like to recommend. Also, technically, it's not a YA book, but my sister, who's 14, read it. We enjoyed it together. City of Brass, and that came out very recently by Chakraborty, and I highly recommend it. It's about a young woman in Cairo, 19th century, who accidentally summons a genie, and her life goes off the rails from there. So it's a really interesting example of historical fantasy. And the gal who wrote it was actually, I think she was going to be a professor of that era of time, and then she lost her job, so she wrote these books instead. And the historical fiction is just as rich as the fantastic world building, and the character development is outstanding. I really, one of the best series I've read. So any questions in the last minute of, yes.
Rachel, are you going to send us a list of all of these? Because
yeah.
I didn't write them down. That'd be great, because those are great recommendations.
That would be nice, because I didn't get the first one.
Have you read Dragon Riders of Pern series? That was one of my favorites, even as an adult.
Didn't call to me as a kid.
Well, but no, it's not. They're good for adults because the girl. Well, each person has to choose an egg, and then the dragon. It's like a mother. Oh, there's my mother, and then the dragon becomes like their pet and their savior. It's a really good, and it's got really good females.
Like, I was more into the books where the gals were going out and fighting the dragons.
No. These guys get to ride the dragons, and they're their pets. It's really cool.
Like Avatar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like an Avatar, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm widely read in this genre, but I haven't read those. It just didn't do it for me. But maybe I'll give it another go.
You might like them. Try them. Try the first one first. The
Okay.
first one.
Okay.
Who's the author? Who's the author?
McCaffrey,
And McCaffrey.
And McCaffrey. And McCaffrey.
I read them in my 30s and
Oh.
adored them. So
Get me on
Okay,
Facebook if you have more questions. Thanks, guys. It was fun.
Perfect timing. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Thank you.